Hello BookTube, I'm Jonathan and welcome to Words in Time. Now in today's video we're going to be playing the name game book tag. The rules are pretty simple. For each letter in your name you have to pick a book that starts with that same letter. And as much as possible I'm going to be trying to keep them sci-fi. Now I thought this might be pretty fun because I might get to talk about some books that otherwise I might not have thought to talk about. And you guys will get to learn how to spell my name. You might be thinking, Jonathan, that's a pretty common name. Well, yes, but do you spell it with an H? Is it an A or an O? There's a lot of ways to spell Jonathan, so let's find out how I do it, starting with the letter J. For J, I went with Jailbird by Kurt Vonnegut. So Jailbird is the story of Walter F. Starbuck, a man recently released from prison for his minor role in the Watergate scandal. And this book tackles some pretty big topics like politics and labor economics, and it's probably one of Vonnegut's less absurd books, but it can still be pretty funny at times, and it's not exactly a science fiction story, but it does feature Kilgore Trout, a character of Vonnegut's that appears in many sci-fi stories, so for the sake of the video, we'll say that counts. And if you saw my top 5 Kurt Vonnegut books video, this didn't make the top 5, but it definitely would have made my top 10. So if you've read a few of his books and you're looking for something else to try, and you like the sound of this one, definitely pick up Jailbird. Next, for the letter O, I went with Old Man's War by John Scalzi. So in the future, humans are at war with aliens, and the Colonial Defense Force recruits retirees to fight in this war. They don't want young people, they want people with knowledge, experience, and perhaps not a lot left to lose. So this is actually quite a funny book. Our main character, he's quite grumpy, he's very sarcastic, and the second half of the book especially really delivers on its premise, I thought, with some really interesting sci-fi ideas. The story reminds me a little bit of Forever War by Joe Haldeman, if you've read that one. The tone's very different, but if you like that story, you like those kind of ideas, you might like this one too. I personally didn't feel the need to continue the rest of the series after reading it, but I definitely did enjoy it. So let me know what your thoughts are on Old Man's War. Moving on to the letter N, I went with Neuromancer by William Gibson. So Neuromancer is about a washed-up data thief that is hired for one more job, and that brings him up against a powerful artificial intelligence. Now, Neuromancer was massively influential. It basically defined the genre of cyberpunk and even helped to popularize terms such as cyberspace. However, I think I actually enjoy reading about Neuromancer more than I actually enjoyed reading Neuromancer itself. I felt pretty confused at times, and I didn't love the reading experience, but I think this is one that would definitely benefit from a reread. So I might have to try it again at some point and see what I get out of it the second time around. Let me know what you think of Neuromancer, because I know it's pretty polarizing. Some people love it, some people didn't get it, so let me know in the comments what you think about Neuromancer. Next, for the letter A, I went with Abaddon's Gate by James S.A. Corey. Now, I did do a review for this book on the channel, so check that out if you're interested. This is the third book in the Expanse series, and in it, a wormhole is discovered near the planet of Uranus. And the factions of Earth, Mars, and the Outer Planets Alliance all kind of compete for control over it, figure out how it works and why it's there. So for me, the series kind of got back on track with this book. I did like the second one, and it introduced some of the best characters, but I was a bit less interested in the story. Whereas I found this one pretty entertaining, and it also introduced some new ideas that got me excited to read the rest of the Expanse series. So if you're reading it, let me know your thoughts. I believe the final one, book 9, was just released. So let me know if you're caught up and excited for that one, and what your thoughts were on Abaddon's Gate. Next, for the letter T, I went with The Time Machine by H.G. Wells. So this was actually written in 1895. It's the oldest book on the list, and is actually credited with popularizing the idea of a time machine. So in the book, a time traveler builds a device, a time machine, and travels forward in time, hundreds of thousands of years and then millions of years into the future. So, as a modern day reader, this is a little bit hard for me to judge because the idea itself does not seem that new, and for me the plot was a little bit thin, But I'm sure at the time, this was a mind-blowing concept, and I will say that the analysis of culture and the cultural parallels that it draws, I thought were weaved really well into the narrative. So if you're looking for some classic sci-fi, this is a very short, quick read. Pick it up. I'd be interested to hear everybody's thoughts on The Time Machine. Moving on to the letter H, I went with House of Suns by Alistair Reynolds. So around 1,000 years in the future, Abigail Gentian clones herself 999 times. And each of these clones are known as Shatterlings, and they are part of what is known as the Gentian line. So around every 200,000 years, these Shatterlings get together for a reunion. Then around 6 million years in the future, when gathering for their 32nd Gentian reunion, they are attacked, but they don't know by whom, and they don't know why. So this is probably one of the most ambitious books I've ever read. Around every 50 pages or so, it absolutely blew my mind with some new interesting idea or concept about time, technology, artificial intelligence, post-humanism, and it does all of this while telling an interesting and exciting story with rich and deep characters. If you pick up any book on this list, make it this one. Go out right now, pick up yourself a copy of House of Suns by Alistair Reynolds. Moving on to our second A, I picked A Clockwork Orange by Anthony Burgess. So this is set in a near-future dystopia, and we follow a character, Alex, who is part of an ultra-violent teenage gang. And he ends up being arrested and then subjected to an experimental form of aversion therapy. Now, this is a pretty well-known book made even more famous by the Stanley Kubrick film. I will say that some parts of this book are pretty tough to read, but I think if you can stomach the subject matter, the book does have a lot of interesting things to say about society, culture, and free will. Burgess also creates his own lingo for the book, which is a little bit hard to understand at first, but once you become familiar with it, I think it really helps create a sense of time, place, tone. It has a really interesting and unique feel to it. So this is another one that's pretty polarizing. If you have read it, let me know what you think in the comments of A Clockwork Orange. Next, we have our second N and our final letter. And just quickly, I want to say, I think you'd be surprised how few sci-fi books start with the letter N. I know it's only a 1-point letter in Scrabble, but I did some digging around on Goodreads, and to be honest, I didn't find a lot. In fact, the only one that I'd read was Neuromancer. So luckily though, I was able to find one on my TBR list, and that is Neverness by David Zindel. So I don't know a lot about the book because I haven't read it, but I did want to read you this section of the blurb because I think it's pretty awesome, okay? It goes, Mallory Ringus becomes a pilot of the Order of Mystic Mathematicians. Okay, I'm already in. Mystic Mathematicians, I love it, okay? And other seekers of the ineffable flame. His quest to find the Elder Addus, nothing less than the secret of life embroidered in humanity's oldest DNA, will lead him from Neverness's streets of colored ice into the deadly manifold, the space beneath space, whose topology writhes and twists with hideous complexity like a nest of psychedelic snakes. Okay, I know that was just a simile, but I want to find out more about these psychedelic snakes. That sounds awesome. So, I don't think this is a particularly well-known book. It didn't have a ton of ratings on Goodreads, but if you have it, and I'm hoping somebody's read about these mystic mathematicians and psychedelic snakes, please let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'm definitely going to have to get around to this one eventually. So before we wrap up, I want to tag 3 people and give you guys 3 channels to check out. The first is Fit to be Read. This is an awesome sci-fi channel. Mike provides great analysis, really interesting perspective on a range of types of sci-fi books, and he recently did a top 150 science fiction books list. A lot of people do a top 10, and Michael said, I'm going to do that, and then another 140 books. So that's pretty awesome. Check out the link to his channel in the description below. Next, I wanted to tag Liam's Lyceum. Now, Liam talks a little bit about science fiction, but I think he focuses a bit more on fantasy, and I'm not a fantasy expert, but it seems like he deep dives into some lesser known fantasy works. So if you are a fan, go and check him out. I believe he's also a fan of Halo and the Sun Eater series. So any friend of the Empire is a friend of mine. Check out the link to his channel in the description. And for our third and final tag, we have Treebeard's Book Reviews. Now, Treebeard also focuses a little bit more on fantasy, and he has an awesome book collection. I believe he has some from Folio Society as well as some Juniper book covers. So if you enjoy fantasy as well as book collections, go check out his channel. I think you're gonna love it. So there you go, guys. That was the Name Game book tag. That was quite a bit of fun to do. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to like and subscribe because I have a lot of fun stuff planned before the end of the year. So stick around for that and more sci-fi content coming soon.